Welcome to Beyond SEO with Growthack.io, where we look at what really drives growth for brands. From search and content to product data and strategy, we look into the ideas and conversations that go way beyond SEO. I'm Kevin, and today I'm actually joined by Glen, who's a guest on the podcast for a change. He's used to interviewing the guests on here, and he does a really great job as the lead host for the podcast. But yeah, we flipped the table. And,
Indeed.
I'm starting to realize that this job is a lot harder than what it looks like. So there's a bit of pressure on my side. But today it's going to be really interesting to just find out a bit more about you, Glen, because you're used to asking the questions.
Indeed.
So now we've decided to flip the script, and I'm going to ask a few questions and just let the audience get to know a bit more about your journey. So as a first question, what really attracted you to join Growthack?
Yeah, so it all started when I was born in 19. No, I'm not going to go that far back. But so one of the main things, like kind of going back a little bit, was my background was in computer science. And obviously I ended up getting into SEO through me realizing that, software engineering wasn't something I wanted to do. And obviously I ended up getting into SEO because it was something that I thought was closely related to what I was doing before, which might be a little bit, difficult to understand, but I can explain a little bit later on. But going to your question as to what made me want to join Growthack was I always saw the opportunity when it came to working with Growthack in the sense of wherever I want to work, I want to make sure that I can tie it in with my personal goals. So I think kind of looking at when people talk about, work-life balance and everything like that, for me, I'm a big believer in the sense of combining your personal goals and what you want to work towards with what you do professionally. So for me, when I saw the opportunity to work with Growthack, I basically saw an opportunity where I could more optimally connect my personal goals with the business working at Growthack. And that was the main thing that drew me towards the project, because obviously when I first met you and Sarif, I could instantly see where the direction you guys wanted to take the business and to take Growthack. And when I looked and reflected on what I wanted to achieve personally, it was kind of a no-brainer really to kind of join you guys or join Growthack essentially. So
no, I'm really, really happy to hear that, and it's been a pleasure working with you. We were reflecting on this recently, weren't we? That it feels like we're a team now. Yeah. And it takes a while to get that 100%. team chemistry. I guess every if you look at football, football teams, they don't start playing the way that they should be playing up until maybe mid-season or something. Yeah. So we've kind of had our pre-season.
Yeah, pre-season. Yeah.
The pre-season, and now we're ready for this year. And just going back to your personal goals, what really attracted me to you and why we wanted to reach out to you was the fact that you have your SEO for Ecommerce podcast. And it feels like it's not come full circle, but this podcast that we're doing together, it feels like an evolution of what you've done personally. And how have you felt that's prepared you for what you're doing now with Growthack?
Yeah, honestly, when I started the podcast, it was kind of like, I felt like I wanted to just start it, but I didn't really have an idea as to where to take it, if that makes sense. Because for me, like my kind of thought process whenever I do anything is more so geared towards, let's see how it is and just, take it from there. So yeah, starting the SEO for Ecommerce podcast was just more so from, a fun project to do. And one of the things I didn't really realize that it would prepare me for was for just being able to have conversations with a lot of people within the industry, even people that are outside of the industry. So that's kind of the main thing that it's prepared me for, just being able to have conversations and just enjoy the process of learning while speaking to obviously people who have, different experiences and different ways of working with regards to the industry that we're in, which is marketing, specifically SEO. And I feel like I've been able to translate that process of communication with varying people, obviously virtually with the SEO for Ecommerce podcast, to now kind of doing it more in person. And obviously with the in person, it feels a lot more interactive, which makes sense because we're in person. But you get to learn a lot more as well, because it kind of feels like you're sat in a classroom, but in a very interactive way. So when you're being given information, for example, with the Azim episode, when you're being given information, it's like you intake it a lot more effectively.
Yeah, definitely.
So it feels like an interactive class session where you're actively engaging and you're learning something at the same time, which makes a lot of the information and feedback and insights that the guests give on the Beyond SEO podcast that much more effective and stick with me personally. So that's one thing I've kind of enjoyed.
Yeah, certainly. We've had a lot of really good guests on, and you've had some amazing guests on your podcast recently. So yeah, some really intelligent conversations. One of my favorite episodes was the one you did recently around retention marketing, and just trying to understand that that's its own discipline.
Yeah.
And it's something that we don't maybe talk about enough when we do our own work. So yeah, you're always learning from other people's experience, other specialists that are maybe marketing specialists, but have a completely different specialism compared to what you're focused on.
Yeah, 100%. And that's one thing I didn't realize that the podcast, the SEO for e-commerce podcast, would help me with, essentially, because I've said this quite a few times as well to you and to Sarah as well. And also to previous guests when I've spoken on the podcast, was for a long time from an SEO perspective, when it came to marketing, I've always been very like SEO focused, like, oh, how's what we're doing helping the business from an SEO perspective for clients? And when I started the podcast, I started speaking to people that were outside of SEO, like what you were saying before with the retention marketing. And it kind of forced my mind to think beyond SEO. Yeah, to think beyond SEO. Yeah. And now whenever I do SEO, it's improved my SEO processes a lot more, because instead of thinking about, right, I'm doing this because it's going to benefit the SEO channel, I'm now thinking about what we do in terms of, right, I'm doing this because it's going to support email marketing. It can support retention. So yeah, the podcast activities that we've been doing have massively improved how I do SEO, because it's not just SEO I'm thinking about. It's about how is SEO as a channel supporting paid? How is it supporting email marketing? So yeah, it's allowed me to kind of diversify how I go about doing things. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. It really ties in with how we work. So you're a really good fit in terms of Growthack as a company, as an agency, or call it what you will. We really try and go beyond our own specialism and find other specialists to work with brands. And we always find that approach helps overall much better than us just focusing on the technical aspects. Yeah.
Because like it's so much, like you've said this so many times, the times we've spoken about this, it's not just one channel that does everything anymore now. Like obviously the term omni-channel has always been a thing. But with things like AI, visibility becoming so prevalent, as a business, if you're trying to just focus on one channel alone, that's not going to help. And even if you're a marketer, like the way I was going about doing things, if I was trying to carry that approach of just focusing on SEO, then the results that I would be trying to achieve for clients would be quite limited, because I'm not thinking about the entire business as a whole in terms of visibility. So yes, that's really, really important.
Absolutely. And just touching on one more thing about your SEO for e-commerce podcast, we recently had a guest, and we had a conversation off camera, and it was quite interesting. He was asking about yourself, he was asking about you, Glenn, and he was saying, oh, so Glenn, like, how does it work? So is he, what, do you just hire him for the podcast, And I was like, no, he's part of Growthack, like, he's part of the team. It's like, oh, okay. And I think people may have this impression because you've built up all these communication skills with your podcast. You come off really professionally, I think, on camera. And I think,
thank you.
Yeah,
I try.
It's really great having you as the host, because the guests just feel that professional aspect of what we're doing, because you're a great communicator. So I just wanted to touch on that there's been a lot of transferable skills, I think.
100%. And it goes back to the intangibles, because I've had times, like I said, when I was doing the SEO for e-commerce podcast, where I thought to myself, I've been doing this for quite a bit of time. I don't know what I've said this again to you so many times. I've been asked like what the end goal is. Yeah. And for me, it's just a process. I'm just, going along with it just because I'm having fun with it, just getting to speak to other people within the industry. But the intangibles that I've been able to build and develop, like what you're saying before, the communication and just being able to kind of manage the conversations with the podcast, is something that I've enjoyed kind of developing, but I've not realized that it's something I've developed. So it's quite interesting.
That's good. That's good. I think it's a really good mindset to have, to focus on a craft. I think it's a forgotten skill. I think not a lot of people are focusing on perfecting their craft, putting in the time, putting in the hours, doing all the work behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Sometimes we focus on the end goal. Maybe we shouldn't. So I really appreciate your approach there.
Yeah.
And just moving on to your actual experience within SEO specifically, you've worked with a lot of supplement brands, healthcare brands. Could you touch on your experience there, and how have you found the differences between each brand?
Yeah.
And in your career, what would you advise brands in those specific niches?
Yeah, so one of the things I've noticed, especially with e-commerce brands, specifically within the supplement field, is regulation and compliance sometimes is more important than speed. So I've worked with certain brands where you have to be kind of focused more on how you write content, for example, than trying to be programmatic in terms of creating content. So a lot of people within technical SEO are familiar with the term programmatic SEO, where you're kind of relying on, automated templates to build pages. But from the times I've worked with a lot of supplement brands, and I've obviously worked with a lot of brands within skincare as well, they kind of have to be careful in terms of how they handle their speed in terms of output. And it's specifically with the content where they have to control that and be regulated. So anything that they output, they know the fact that it will get scrutinized within their industry. Yep. So trying to manage the effectiveness of that whenever we want to pitch SEO ideas to those types of brands, we have to be able to manage that. So that's one thing we've noticed specifically. And obviously e-commerce in general as well, I've noticed is the handling of the scaling of a business, in the sense that technically if a business is starting to grow, like more traffic and whatnot, we want to make sure that things like the crawlability and also indexing of pages is also managed. So I've seen it specifically with brands that I've worked with, that as they continue to grow pretty quickly, they can tend to outgrow their technical SEO. Yep. So I've noticed that a lot of these brands, things may look good in terms of revenue's up, they're doing really well, but that's being covered by the fact that they've got a strong brand. Paid is doing well as well. Yes. So whilst they're doing well, if you get into the nitty gritty of things from a technical SEO perspective, you can see that crawlability is an issue, duplicate pages, product variants are an issue as well. So that's one thing I've noticed when looking at brands specifically within kind of the supplement section as well. Those kind of fundamentals are not as up to scratch.
And why is that, do you think? Is it because they are just focused on scaling, growth, and maybe they're focusing more on the brand elements, which are important, of course, to grow an e-commerce brand? You do need to have some kind of presence in the market, but perhaps they are neglecting the technical foundations that can help them scale even further. Do you think that's the reason why they get to a point where you get the site into such a complete mess?
Yeah, I follow a lot of, like what you said before, I've worked with a lot of these brands which are like skincare, health and supplements, and one of the things I've noticed is I follow a lot of them on social media, and it's quite exciting to do the influencer marketing, to work with obviously influencers to promote your products, and it's through that early kind of garnering of new customers where they build this strong brand and they kind of take away their eye from the technical foundations, and if that makes sense. Yeah. That they're seeing themselves grow as a brand that they don't really need to think about the technical aspects, because they're like, well, if revenue's up, then the site should be doing its job. It's helping us get revenue. So from that aspect, I can see why it gets neglected, because they're just seeing that the branding is performing really well. But it kind of goes back to what I was touching on before, where those, I'm not going to say front end or face value stuff like brand and positioning are doing well. It kind of carries everything, so it kind of masks and hides the key technical stuff, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's only when the site starts performing really slow, and certain pages aren't being discovered on search results, or in this case AI, for example, that's when the stakeholders can be like, well, what's wrong with the website? And that's when they're like, oh, technically it's not really up to scratch with the growth that we've been achieving. And that's when they have to start looking at, obviously, SEO from a technical perspective, which is where people like us from Growthack can come in and provide support.
Yeah, certainly. I'm just thinking back to one client that we currently work with, and the reason why they started working with us is because they're so heavily reliant on paid, and they've got to a point where they realize that's a pain point for them. You know, that is too much money they're spending on ads when they could be potentially getting that traffic organically. And on the face of it, their brand looks amazing. They got loads of social media followers. They're doing amazing revenue. And then when you dive deeper into the site, you know, they're paying for certain terms where organically they're not appearing at all, which is quite interesting. So yeah, it's a much needed discipline in terms of having somebody with your technical experience. I think that is almost a second thought.
Yeah.
And maybe it needs to be brought into the forefront. Just moving onto this conversation and SEO being put into the forefront. With the rise in AI, it feels like that conversation has shifted. It feels like technical SEO is now getting the glory that it deserves.
It's our time to shine.
Definitely is. Looking into the future, what do you think the future of technical SEO looks like in 2026 and moving forward?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So one of the things, kind of going back, there was a certain survey that was asked on LinkedIn to people within the SEO space, and I was sent a question kind of similar to that in the sense of, what do you think is going to be really, really important heading into obviously 2026 and beyond? And I think now it's not so much about knowing technical SEO. Obviously, it's great to have the fundamental knowledge, but it's about being able to implement your knowledge and at the same time explain to the stakeholders what the issue is and obviously how you've done it. Because a lot of the times, you're probably fully familiar with this, a lot of the clients, they're pretty clued up on a lot of the technical stuff in terms of certain things to an extent. But I think where now it's going to be really important in 2026 and beyond is having like a deep knowledge that goes way beyond what stakeholders are familiar with, and being able to communicate that to the clients. Because I've seen as well, a lot of the clients, when we explain things or when we talk about certain things being an issue, they want someone to be able to clearly kind of convey that and be like, oh, this is what the issue is and how it's affecting revenue, for example. So being able to have that strong technical foundation, that's really, really deep, but being able to then implement that technical knowledge and explain how you've gone about it. Because you've said this before, visibility to stakeholders is so important. They want to have a full understanding of what they're doing. Gone are the days of where you can just be like, oh, you can just kind of throw technical jargon and the stakeholders like, I have no idea what he said, but I'm just going to nod my head. Nowadays, a lot of the times, I've seen this as well now with a lot of the clients that we work with, they want to understand, like, okay, what does this exactly mean? Like, you know, go past the technical lingo, essentially. So yeah, it's for me, I think in 2026, you have to be able to clearly communicate the technical aspects, but also have that deep knowledge that goes beyond what stakeholders are basically familiar with, and being able to execute that and then convey to the stakeholders how you've gone about your process, as opposed to trying to hide in the shadows as to what you've done.
Yeah, certainly. I'm experiencing this personally, having conversations with one of our clients where before we were working with the founder, and the founder was a bit more creative, a bit more willing to invest in marketing activity without really questioning what's coming out of it too much. So there wasn't too much scrutiny. And then they've recently brought on a chief operating officer, and we're getting very different lines of questioning now.
Yeah.
It's all about ROI. It's all about, do we need to be spending money on this? You know, and we recently implemented server-side tracking, things like that. And even that's coming under scrutiny. Oh, so how does this affect revenue? You know, is this making a profit for us, etc.? So yeah, it's a different kind of conversation for different stakeholders. Yeah. How would you say SEOs need to navigate that? And let's say they don't have the communication skills. Is that a big worry for them? Or, you know, how can you navigate that? Because in my experience, I found like you're either really technically good or you're a really good communicator, and it's very difficult to get both of those people in one person.
That's a really, really good question, because I think, like, going back to that survey that was asked on LinkedIn, like I think it's so important Now, I think you can't be one-dimensional, if I'm being honest, in the sense of you can't just be doing technical SEO, then just hide in the shadows. Maybe you're working in an agency where you've got an account manager, and they can handle the communications with the client for you if you're a technical SEO. Or if you're just like an SEO in general, and you're just handling, say, content, for example. I feel like it's so important now to find ways to brush up on your communication skills, especially obviously in our case, I actually enjoy account management. I think just doing account management in and of itself through the repetition of just speaking with clients will help with that communication. Because if you're not able to explain what you're doing and how you've gone about the process, I'm thinking of GCSE maths, but if you're not able to explain how you've gone about doing something for a client, then it's going to hold you back from a career perspective in terms of progression. So I'd say that the best thing to do if you're, say, a technical SEO, say if you're working within an agency or even in-house, for example, if you don't speak to stakeholders that often, start doing it little by little. And over time, you'll start to build that confidence with that communication, because I think it's a confidence thing. It's one of those things where you can be brilliant at the technical stuff, but if you don't know how to kind of convey that, I think that's like a lack of confidence in terms of how to communicate that. But I think if you just through repetition, speaking to stakeholders and the people who don't see what you do and don't see the value in it, if you get used to just explaining that over time, I think you start to build that muscle, because I think it's just a communication muscle, really, that you can develop. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. And just to close off there, I think you had a really good example there, GCSE maths, where you get bonus points for showing you're working, not just giving the answer. Yeah. And maybe SEOs need to think like that in terms of, showing the working behind the answer that they're giving, and not just saying it depends or what have you, but actually show how they've gone about finding those conclusions and communicating that to a stakeholder in a language that they fully understand, because we can't just say the technical jargon without speaking to an operations manager the way they're thinking and the way they're thinking about costs, budgets, etc.
Yeah, and that's so important, because at the end of the day, like everything that we do for a business is to help their bottom line. And I think that's probably the best way. If I was giving advice to someone who's very technical, I'd say kind of step outside of yourself, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's not, it's great that you've done, you've sorted like the migration, for example, a migration setup, or you've sorted out some 404s. But you have to think about, okay, I understand this and it makes sense, but someone who doesn't know what I know, that I'm taking for granted, the things that I know I'm taking for granted that other people know, think about them and be like, okay, how would I explain this to the COO or the CEO or other members of the team that don't know what I do or have the technical knowledge that I do? And I think through having that mindset, you can better structure how you convey stuff, so that one, you get better recognition, because it's all great saying that, I fixed all these 404s that were, affecting the site negatively. Yeah. But if you kind of say, I fixed these 404s because they were affecting the site performance, which were affecting revenue, then people that don't understand what you're saying will be like, that's quite valuable, that the site's performing a lot better because of that. So absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the best way to kind of frame things when you're technical as a person when it comes to SEO.
Definitely. Yeah. We need to speak that universal language, which is money.
Yeah,
exactly. Everyone understands money going down or going up. So speaking that universal language makes things a lot clearer. Mm. Right. And just before we close this episode, any exciting projects that you're working on? I know you've got a few hobbies.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing quite a lot of hobbies, to be fair. So I've got a few jiu-jitsu tournaments coming up in January. Also currently learning Japanese. Nihongo. I'm not even going to try and say it. Still in progress. Nihongo ga sukoshi dekimasu. Benkyou juu desu. Demo. Yeah, I'm still learning a lot, but learning Japanese, doing jiu-jitsu, and that's quite a lot there.
I'm going to pretend that I understood what you just said there. Hopefully it's nice, whatever you just said there.
I basically said I'm learning Japanese. I can speak Japanese a little bit, but still a work in progress. So
Yeah, I find that really fascinating. Just for the people out there that don't know this, so Glenn speaks a few languages and he's pretty fluent in Spanish, which I think is pretty amazing. So yeah, there's a few different skills that you've got there in terms of communication.
Yeah.
And if people want to get in touch with you, how best can they find you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn's the main place to find me. Glen Chamisa. Obviously, you can see a lot of the stuff that I post, Growthack related stuff, and also podcast stuff for the SEO for e-commerce podcast. That's where I'm mainly active. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
Brilliant. Yeah, so where any event organizers out there, if you need a good public speaker, you certainly know where to find Glenn. Hope you enjoy the episode and hopefully you find a ton of value in that. We will return with another episode shortly. And thanks very much for your time.